Hey guys, it's Ranish again. Welcome to Git for the Intimidated 5, using GitHub as in online. So today we're going to talk about using Git on the internet, as in using it with GitHub. We're going to create a repo and push up to it. And the next time we'll talk about playing nicely with GitHub, that is having collaborators. So remember way back in Screencast 1, when I talked about how GitHub would save us from doing something awfully painful, which is having to email our files to each other. So let's see what that would look like. So here I have an image, and it's an image file I took. We're emailing some files, our very important files from Screencast 1 to some bro at bro.com. And imagine if we had to email a project like this. I'm sure we'd zip it up, but just imagine how crappy that would be if we had to, if that was the only way we had to share files. So GitHub is here to save us from that hassle. Now, as a disclaimer, I'm sure before GitHub, some clever hackers had invented a way to easily share files before GitHub. But you as perhaps a non-hacker, do you really think you might have been privy to all that info? I don't know. So to avoid the hassle of email, we use GitHub. So let's go there right now. So this is the GitHub page. So if you haven't created a GitHub account, just go to sign up for free and do that. And then once you're done, let's sign in. So I'm going to sign in. And I'm going to sign in. And there you go. And cool, I'm signed into GitHub. So what I want us to do is take our cool comedy script we wrote in the last screencast, Screencast 4, and put it on GitHub to share with our friends. So remember that when we wanted to track a version of some files or folders in Git, we ran the git init command in the folder we wanted to track. And that initialized an empty Git repository. So if you haven't yet, I want you to do that. So open up Terminal. And right now, as you can see, I'm on my desktop. And I'm going to navigate into the Story folder. See right here, I have a folder called Story. I'm just going to navigate into that. And I list all the files. And cool, you can see I have a file in there called Cool Story. So I'm going to open that up. .txt. Like I said, the command line is not forgiving. And there's our cool story. First line with the second line. I'm going to close that out. And I'm going to clear out with Command K and run git log, which you should remember. And notice this repo has two commits, writing a second line for the story, and then the oldest commit is the first line of the story written. So get up to this point. You can look at Screencast 4 to get up to this point if you're rusty in doing that. And just pause right now and maybe go make sure you have this on your desktop. Okay, so let me assume you've got that ready, and let's move on. So let's go back to the GitHub site, and when you create your account, notice right next to your screen name is this Create a Repo button. So that's the first step of creating a repo on GitHub. So click that. And you come to this screen right here, all this stuff. And the first step is just naming your repo on GitHub. It doesn't actually have to match your folder locally, but I'm going to call it Cool Story. So there you go. You'll get a little green check mark. And a description. That's basically a little longer thing. So Cool Story, I'm writing to illustrate how easy Git is to use. There you go. And then finally, you have two more settings. So first, you choose between public or private. If you're not paying for a GitHub premium account, you can only do public. And if you do private, you see this has this little upgrade your account thing. So public means anyone can see the repository, anyone can fork the repository. The only thing you really have control over is who can actually push code up to it. And finally, there's this option of initialize repository with a README. I never click this. You don't have to click this. But basically, you only click this when your project will begin on GitHub, as in you don't have any files locally. But right now we have our story file locally in our computer, so we don't need to do that. So we don't need to click this. I'm going to hit Create Repository. And cool. So now I have come to this create a new repository in the command line screen. So this page is the last step of creating our repo. So notice there's two blocks of commands, one called create a new repo and the other called push an existing repo. So create a repo, and then push an existing repo. So why the 2 blocks? Well, let's just look at the commands that we're being told. So let's look at this create a new repo block. And look at the commands it's saying to run on your command line. So you'd open terminal, you'd navigate to the folder whose contents you wanted to push up to GitHub. And it's saying, and actually I'll try and do this a little both. It's saying do touch readme.md. Basically it's saying create a file called readme. Then it's saying run git init to initialize the repository. And create your first commit. Git add readme.md, git commit -m first commit. So it has you basically initialize the repo, create a file, and then commit the file. If you already have done that with other files, you don't have to actually run these instructions verbatim then. This is just their recommendation. GitHub always recommends that you have a readme file in your repo. So that's why they're saying like to make a readme file and make that your first commit. So now looking back on it, if you look now between these 2 blocks, these 2 last lines and these 2 lines are exactly the same actually. So let's parse those 2 lines and go over what they actually mean. So let's look at this first line. Git remote add origin, and then there's this address. And if you look at the address, it's github.com/Ranish, which is my GitHub username, and the name of my repo, which we just called Cool Story. So the Ranish should be replaced with your username right there. And then if you named your repo Cool Story, that should say the same, otherwise it might change. So what's this line mean? What's a remote? A remote is actually short for remote repository. Here you go. It's a repo of your project that lives off your local computer somewhere else. So in this case, our remotes live on GitHub, but remotes can live anywhere. So when you finally push like a Ruby on Rails app up to Heroku, you're creating a remote that lives on Heroku's servers. So let's dissect this command. I'm going to copy and paste this command in. And you can copy and paste from here. A lot of people just do that directly. And what does this mean? Well, what this command really means is, hey Git, add a remote repository called origin. I'm going to move this over a bit. That lives at this address. There you go. So basically we're saying, hey, Git, there's going to be a remote repository that you should know about that lives at, and we're going to name it origin, and it lives at this web address. So let's parse the command another way. And what you can really say is the command is git remote add. That's our command, and then we're going to give it 2 arguments. We're going to give it remote name, which we said is origin in this case, and then remote address, which is equal in this case to HTTPS, blah, blah, GitHub. There you go. So those are 2 ways of thinking about the command, but basically it's saying, hey Git, add a remote repository for me. So let me run that command. There you go. And no output's a good thing in this case. So now if you look, there was a second command, git push u origin master. It's the same on both ones. So let's parse this command a bit. Git push dash u. Oh. Alright, so what is this saying? This is basically saying, hey Git, push all the stuff up in this local repo upstream to a remote called origin, and you'll be pushing up our master branch. I'm going to actually rephrase that. Give me 1 second. Okay, git push u origin master. Normally you would just type this verbatim, but let's explain what it means. This says, hey Git, push all the stuff up in this local repository, as in on your computer. Push all the stuff up in this local repository's master branch upstream to the remote called origin, i.e. GitHub. And the -u part, what it says is, hey Git, the master branch that will live on the remote will track with the master branch that lives locally. So your local master branch will track with your master branch up on GitHub. And this sounds confusing, but it just basically makes sure the master branch in your local repo is the same as the master branch on GitHub. So you're going to run these two commands. And that's it. And let me clear out this thing and just try it. And we're going to run the command. And look, this output is good. This output shows that it's actually pushing up to GitHub. And just waiting. And if you have a slow internet connection, things will take time. There you go. So we finally are done. We got all this as a output. It says branch master set up to track remote branch from origin. That's that -u part. And pushed up to GitHub is a new branch called master. So there we go. So now let's go back to our project page, and this part is actually not intuitive, but you want to actually hit Command R, or you want to hit the link to go back to this repo and refresh the page here. So just let me actually refresh the page. And there you go. Now gone are those directions, and instead it's all our project documents. So look, here's our cool story file, and look, it even has our 2 lines. Like we opened it up and went in and saw our 2 lines. So pretty cool. And notice there's this message, Git wants you to add a README. They always love adding READMEs. So yeah, we just pushed our local repo of this folder called story, and now lives on GitHub actually, and we can see it on GitHub. Cool. So maybe at this point the idea of remotes, repos, and branches is still a bit confusing. So you can be forgiven for maybe doing those setup instructions a bit verbatim. But, you know, give it some time, it will settle in. So cool. We see our file now, and we see our commit history. And look, there's our 2 commit histories. And if locally we run git log, notice they're the exact same. So our commit history of writing a second line and first line of story are matched here locally. So everything is now on our computer, but also on GitHub. So let's do something. Let's open the file locally. Okay, and let's add a 3rd line. So I'm going to Command K, and I'm going to run ls, and I'm going to open my and I'm going to write a 3rd line. All right. Now you can't just push up right away, okay? So I've saved the file, but now if I refresh here on GitHub, does GitHub know about my cool 3rd line? Let's look. No, they don't. They don't know yet. So we need to make a change, commit it, and then push it up to GitHub. All right. So I'm going to make a commit. Okay, so I committed my change. Is it still on GitHub? Let's take a look. I'm going to refresh this page. And no, it's not. So it's not there. And if I look, if I go back, in my commit history, is my 3rd commit even there? No, it's not. But here, let me run git log. And wait, my 3rd commit is here locally. So what's going on? I have to run one more command. I have to run one more command, and that is git push origin master. Okay, and this will push my changes up to GitHub. So what this says is, hey Git, push up to the remote origin the master branch I have locally. So it's saying push up to the remote called origin, the master branch I have locally, and it'll push it onto the remote origins master branch because they're set up to track each other. So I'm going to run this command. And it's working. And you notice last time when we initialized, like when we put it on GitHub initially, there was git push -u origin master. You don't have to write the -u again. Basically, Git now knows that that your origin master is on is the same thing as GitHub's origin master. Okay, so now let's take a look. Now let's refresh the page here on GitHub. And cool, our third commit is there. Nice. And if we look on the commit, yeah, look, like it's showing our change there. A very cool line a very cool third line for the greatest story ever. So that was it. We created a GitHub repo and we pushed up to it. So that's about it for the time limit on this screencast. It's already getting pretty big. Let's review real quick. So first we had a local project in our computer called Story, and it was a local repo. Then we logged into GitHub and we created a new repo. And we went through this jazz. And then we went through those instructions afterwards. And that was it. And then we ran git push origin master to push up our changes to GitHub. Then we refreshed our page and it was there. So that's all for today. In the next screencast, we'll talk about adding collaborators, forking, and pulling repos. And it'll round out a two-parter on like basic GitHub. And after that, we'll get into some advanced stuff like merge conflicts and branch workflow. So you can hit me up at www.renish.com, renish@gmail.com, and that's my name, R-O-N-E-E-S-H, Renish. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.